What's going on, everybody? Welcome into episode 109 of the MudWatch Sports Podcast on this Monday, September 15th, 2025. I'm your host, Zach Malum. But before we get started, please subscribe below. Follow all of my social accounts. Let's start things off in the world of football as both New York teams were in action this weekend. And we'll start things down in Dallas as the New York Giants took on the Dallas Cowboys on Sunday afternoon, and this one was an absolute thriller that had 41 combined points in the fourth quarter, bringing it into overtime, tied at 37, and it was Dallas who came out on top with a 40-37 win. Brandon Aubrey, who tied it as time expired at the end of regulation with a 64-yard field goal after the Giants took the lead shortly before that with Malik Neighbors, a 48-yard touchdown from Russell Wilson with just 25 seconds left on the clock. Giants lead by 3. Aubrey hits the 64-yard field goal, and then they go into overtime and a couple of trading possessions. And finally, Aubrey, as time expires in overtime, hits a 46-yard field goal to give the Cowboys a monster win to move them to 1-1. The Giants fall to 0-2, and this one was an absolute heartbreaker for the New York Giants, one that they can only blame themselves in, and they really had the ball with a lot of time in their hands. They had the lead for a lot of this game, and they end up giving it away. I think a big portion of it had to do with how bad the defense was down the stretch, just allowing the Cowboys to come back each and every time in this game. I mean, the Giants had a 13-3 lead early in the second quarter with Malik Neighbors catching a touchdown right away. Dallas comes back and gets a touchdown of their own with Cavante Turpin. And then you look at later in the game, in the fourth quarter, Giants take the lead with Cam Skattebo, and it was Miles Sanders who responded with a touchdown of his own. And the Cowboys lead. Then Wan'Dale Robinson gets a touchdown as well for the Giants. Then they give up another touchdown, George Pickens this time. And yes, you can't really fully blame the secondary for this one. It's the entire defense, but I think the biggest thing was as well the penalties, just monster penalties down the stretch for the Giants. They had 14 of them for a total of 160 yards of penalties. That's just not good enough, and they need to be more disciplined. That's check number one for Brian Daboll during practice this week. They have to stay disciplined, especially in big games like that against divisional opponents. You're on the road, you have the lead, and you basically throw it all away with 160 yards in penalties. That's not good enough, and even though the Cowboys on the other side had 12 penalties of their own for 106 yards, it's just not a great look for Brian Daboll. It just seems like he doesn't have his team under control. And really, when you're looking at it, Russell Wilson had really the game of his career, it almost looked like, with a monster performance that he just kept going and going. Every single time the Cowboys would score, Russell Wilson would find an answer. He threw for a total of 450 passing yards, 3 touchdowns. The big stat that stands out for Wilson, though, was the interception in overtime. A moon ball that he just throws up in the air, and Dallas picks it off very easily, goes down the field with a couple of minutes to go in overtime, and ultimately win the game 40-30. But overall for the Giants, when you're looking at this game, it's a game that they should win. They had the lead down the stretch, and they just could not hold on to it. A bad loss for the Giants, and something that Brian Daboll needs to respond to as they go back home now for a couple of very tough games. They take on the Chiefs on the weekend on Sunday Night Football, and then the weekend after that, they have the Chargers, both at MetLife Stadium. 2 tough games that the Giants really have to figure things out, but a bad sign that they now start 0-2. And I mentioned a couple of weeks ago when previewing this season for the Giants, it wouldn't have been shocking to me if they did start 1-5 or even 1-9 on the season. Just how tough this schedule is down the stretch when you look at after the Saints game. That's probably the only game that they should win, even though it is on the road. I mean, the Eagles twice, they got the Niners as well, the Broncos in there. Just a tough schedule that the Giants have to deal with right now, and losing the first couple of games in a game that you really weren't even close in against Washington on the road in week 1. And then a heartbreaker on the road in Dallas in a game that you should win. The Giants need to pick up victories right now, especially if Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen want to keep their jobs. it doesn't look like that's coming anytime soon, because even a game that they should win in Dallas with the lead, they really find ways to screw it up. So not a good sign right now for the New York Giants. And like I mentioned, they have to go back home to face off against the Kansas City Chiefs, who are going to come in with a lot of attitude on their mind. They're 0-2 for the first time in a long time under Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. So it's going to be a tough game for the Giants that they have to figure it out on their home field. But just a heartbreaking loss in the end. It came down to the Giants' mistakes. Really, that was the story. Even in a tie, if they tied this game against the Cowboys, you go, all right, it stinks that you tied the game. You probably should have won it, but you're feeling a lot better about it. They lost this game based on a mistake by Russell Wilson, an interception in overtime, but also, I mean, the mistakes throughout the day by the defense when it comes to penalties, the offense when it comes to penalties. The offensive line was putrid in this game, even though Russell Wilson threw for 450 yards. So they have a lot to figure out in just 1 week when they welcome the Kansas City Chiefs. It's not a good start, though, for the New York Giants as they fall to 0-2 on the season. Let's shift things to the other side of MetLife Stadium, and it was not much better. It was actually way worse for the New York Jets. They welcomed the Buffalo Bills on Sunday afternoon, and this game was all Buffalo. The scoreline doesn't even give the Bills the benefit of the doubt on this one. Yes, it's 30-20. It could have been 30-0 with how well the Buffalo Bills played and how poorly the New York Jets played. A horrendous 30-10 loss on their home field, and Buffalo, like I said, just dominated this game from start to finish. Josh Allen did not even account for a touchdown. It is just the second time in his career that the Bills have won a game and he has not accounted for a touchdown. The other time, a couple years ago, against the New York Jets at MetLife Stadium, where the Bills won that game 18-10, relied on field goals the entire day. Could have done the same here, relied on field goals, but it was all the rushing attack that really was the story in this game. They run for 224 yards on the ground. A ridiculous stat that the Jets defensive line that really coming into this season looked a lot better and looked like a positive sign for the Jets. It was anything but in this game against Buffalo. Could not get even close to guys like James Cook and even Josh Allen as he ran out of the pocket. It just ridiculous stuff from the Jets on defense. Not good enough. They had plenty of penalties as well, 5 of them to be exact. Actually, the Bills had more in this game, 6 of them on their own side, but the Jets did not play well enough, and they did not do anything on the offensive side that gives you optimism. Even when Tyrod Taylor came into this game after Justin Fields went out with what we assume is a concussion, maybe a question if he'll miss next week's game. So that's a real storyline heading into the Jets game down in Tampa next Sunday. But Tyrod Taylor even didn't show you the positive signs of this Jets offense. They ran for a total of 100 yards, and that was the positive of the offense. Even though Breece Hall himself, a guy who had a 100-yard game a week ago, looked like a brand new running back in that Jets backfield. 2.1 yards per carry in this game. Just nowhere to go. The Jets offensive line was not great in this game. They allowed 4 sacks to Buffalo. And then even the passing game. I mean, Justin Fields went out of this game just towards the end of the third quarter into the fourth quarter. He did not do anything when it came to passing. Just 22 yards of passing. The Jets overall 54 yards of passing. It's just not good enough right now for the Jets. And they end up taking a game where you look at the outlook and you go, all right, well, this is what they expected a little bit with Aaron Glenn. You bring in a new regime. You bring in a bunch of new guys, offense, defense, figuring things out. It's just about showing optimism that you can maybe compete next year. You're not really going to compete this year. I feel like the Jets overall, you're probably hoping for 5 or 6 wins and just a little bit of a boost towards the end of the season once the schedule gets a bit easier. And that's really what you're hoping for the Jets. You're not getting that in this week 2 performance. Just everything went wrong for the Jets, and Aaron Glenn was heated in his post-game press conference, one that I think the Jets probably listened to, and a lot of these guys said, yeah, he's right. I mean, they got to turn it around. Just a bad game in all facets, offense, defense, just not good enough right now for the Jets. And they end up, I think the big stat line that stood out to me was that towards the end of the game, got a bunch of fourth down conversions. They were actually 3 for 3 on fourth down. Third down, 0 for 11. That is just the second time in the last 6 years or the last 5 years that the Jets have not converted a third down. Just bad stuff there. Big time situations where you need to get the ball over the first down mark, and you just cannot figure out a way to do so. They had 11 first downs on the day. None of them came when it was third down and those tough spots. So that's something that this Jets team needs to work on. They may not be with Justin Fields next week. It might be Tyrod Taylor leading the offense, but they need to show a lot more fight than they actually did against Buffalo. It almost seems like they gave up in this game once the Bills put up a bunch of numbers. James Cook had himself a monster day, and probably once he got that second touchdown, it was lights out for this Jets team. And nowhere close, they gave up. It was 20-0 midway through the second quarter. That's the point where you go, all right, well, we're on to next week. It looked like it from this Jets team. They did have a good drive down the stretch, and they end up getting the score with Jeremy Ruckert with 3 minutes to go. That's really the only thing that you look at and go, all right, well, they did something on offense. That's really not good enough for the Jets, and they have to figure things out as they go down to Tampa next week, and they're going to face off against a very tough Tampa Bay Buccaneers team. So both the Giants and the Jets, a bad week for New York football. They both lose for the second week in a row, and that really is just the story right now for New York football. A lot of changes, a lot going on, and there could be some coaching changes, hierarchy changes soon, especially on the Giants side if this doesn't change pretty quickly. But we have some Monday Night Football games to get to, and let's actually do a Monday Night Football preview, a doubleheader in week 2. Just a great slate of games. And when you look at the first game on Monday night, it's going to be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 1-0 on the year, going on the road to take on the 0-1 Houston Texans. That game is 7 o'clock tonight with Tampa coming in as the underdog. It's the Texans who are 2.5-point favorites, total sitting at 42.5. You would expect points in this one, even though it's total at 42.5, a little bit lower, and the total obviously moving down right now. It opened at 45.5, so that's maybe a sign of something, but I feel like these offenses really put up a lot of points, and when you look at the Texans, it was a bad week 1. They really did not play well on offense. Nico Collins was barely involved, and the Texans end up only putting up 9 points on the road against the Rams. 14-9 was the final at SoFi Stadium. That's not this Texans team that we've known for the last year or so. CJ Stroud's got to get things going. He's got to get his weapons involved. They're going to be without another wide receiver in Christian Kirk for the second week in a row. And that's a guy that maybe even would wake up this Texans wide receiver room to say, all right, guys, we got to be better. You need that leader in that room. Nico Collins, even though he's one of the best in all of football, is really still very young and a guy that you wouldn't completely rely on just yet as the end-all be-all veteran in that room. I think Christian Kirk coming in would have been a very positive sign for this squad, and he is there, but he's not going to be playing for the second week in a row due to a hamstring injury. Excuse me. So when you look at the Bucs side of things, though, they came off a big win on the road against Atlanta, 23-20. And it was Young Ho Koo who missed the long field goal for Atlanta that gave the Bucs the win in the end as time expired. But it was Emeka Egbuka who was the story in that opening game for Tampa. 23-20, they win it with Egbuka. Only 4 receptions in that game, but 2 of them were 4 touchdowns. So he should look for a monster game once again tonight. Baker Mayfield, CJ Stroud. It should be a good matchup between these two defenses as well. Going to make it tough on these quarterbacks. So we'll see what happens. I'm going to end up with this spread being short at 2.5, saying that the Texans win it, but very, very closely. And I think the Bucs end up covering this 2.5-point spread. Should be interesting to find out how it all ends, but the Bucs coming in with the confidence after a win but something that they have to work on. When they look at that tape against Atlanta, it wasn't pretty all throughout, and they need to figure things out. But they go on the road for the second consecutive week. Houston returns home. I think this should be a close game. We'll see what happens. 7 o'clock tonight as the Bucks take on the Texans down in Houston. And the other Monday Night Football game, part of this doubleheader, 10 o'clock tonight, as you get the 7 o'clock game, the 10 o'clock game. This one's out in Vegas, though, as a strong AFC West matchup between the Los Angeles Chargers and the Las Vegas Raiders. The Chargers come into this game as 3.5-point favorites, total sitting at 46.5. Both of these teams coming off of wins in week one. It was the Raiders who took down the Patriots on the road at Gillette Stadium, a 20-13 victory a week ago. And the Chargers made a statement in their division. They take down the Chiefs down in Sao Paulo, Brazil, where they won 27-21 in a great game all throughout. The Chargers go on the road once again. Well, yeah, maybe they were the home team down in Sao Paulo, but not a home game for them. They end up going to Vegas this time and then finally return home to SoFi Stadium. But right now, you're looking at it for this Chargers team. It's going to be a tough game for them. I know this spread is a little bit favoring the Chargers in 3.5, and maybe they get over the line and get the job done, but it is a short spread here, and I think the Raiders end up covering this game. I don't think they end up winning. I think the Chargers will do that. I think both favorites on Monday night end up winning the game, but when you look at this Raiders team, it could be a tough test for the Chargers backfield in Amari and Hampton, and it also could be a tough test for just the Chargers overall, their offense to keep up, because this Raiders defense on the front line is pretty tough. Max Crosby and the boys will get them going. It's the secondary where the Raiders struggle a little bit, but even so, this Raiders offense, under Geno Smith, you got a lot of guys there with Brock Bowers still questionable, but looks like he might play in this game. Still a question mark of whether he will or not. Obviously, Michael Mayer is right behind him if he cannot go, Brock Bowers, but you also have the star player out of Boise State, who the Raiders drafted pretty early in the draft this year, 6th overall. Ashton Genty will get a appearance in this game, and he was really good in week one, 19 carries, including a touchdown. Not his best yards per carry game, only at 38 yards on the ground, but I think this Raiders offense under Pete Carroll, Geno Smith at quarterback, they know how to figure things out, and they can sling the ball. Boy, can they sling it down the field with Geno at QB. So we'll see what happens, but I think the Raiders end up covering, the Chargers end up winning. It should be a very close game between these two AFC West opponents. So we'll see what happens, but enjoy Monday Night Football, the doubleheader between the Bucks and the Texans, as well as the Chargers and the Raiders. Should be a great one. 7 o'clock and 10 o'clock tonight, respectively. But let's move things to the world of baseball, as both New York teams were in action this weekend. And we'll start things off with the New York Mets, as they finally have snapped the losing streak. It ends at 8 games, where the Mets end up winning on Sunday afternoon in walk-off fashion. It's Pete Alonso who hits a 3-run bomb in the 10th inning to give the Mets a 5-2 victory. It was a long stretch for this Mets team during that losing streak. They lost the final 2 in Cincinnati, got swept all 4 games in Philadelphia, lost the first 2 against Texas in games that they probably should have won, and that's really what it comes down to. Not good enough in the end, especially Saturday's game in this Texas series. You would say, yeah, probably the Friday game, you throw it away. Jonathan did not look good, and they gave up 6 runs in the first inning, and Jonathan got knocked out without getting out of the first inning. Just 2/3 of an inning, 4 hits allowed, 6 earned runs, 3 walks, 1 strikeout, 40 pitches. You're not going to really get a lot of help from your starting rotation there. It's not going to be a good day for your baseball team. And that's what it's been really for a lot of this stretch for the Mets. Their starters cannot go deep, and they're relying on their young guys to get them over the line. Well, Jonathan is one of their young guys, and he had a bad start. His ERA is all the way up to 8.49 in 3 starts this season. So a throwaway game, especially when you're going up against an old friend in Jacob deGrom. He went 7 innings like he always does, 4 hits allowed. With 3 earned runs, the Mets were able to get to him, but no walks and just 2 strikeouts. Not a typical Jacob deGrom game. It seemed like the Mets were making a lot of contact, but they were just down too much too early in this game. A 6-0 Texas lead going into the bottom of the first. I mean, it's just not going to help you heading into the rest of that game, and they end up losing it 8-3. It was Saturday's game where it really felt like this season was almost over. I mean, that's the feeling right now for the Mets as they went up 2-0. Juan Soto hit another bomb, and they put the Mets up 2-0 in the 7th inning, but then it was the Texas Rangers that continued to rally. They got to the Mets bullpen. Tyler Rogers did not have his best stuff, allows 1 earned run in this one, but then Edwin Diaz as well allows a 1 earned run in this game and just did not get the job done. And really, when you look at it, it was Rowdy Tellez who hit a ground rule double, a RBI ground rule double to tie the game at 2. That was off of Edwin Diaz in the top of the 8th. And then Wyatt Langford ends up knocking in another run to give Texas a 3-2 lead in the top of the 9th. Mets strike out to end the game a couple times in the bottom of the 9th. And that's really the story as the Mets lost 8 in a row. And finally, they bounced back. And Pete Alonso, I mentioned it, hits a walk-off 3-run bomb to give the Mets a 5-2 victory. But it's just been ugly in the month of September. And you look at the numbers overall in this stretch, it's been really good from the offense of in the month of August. When you look at 6.32 runs per game in the month of August for the Mets versus 4.15 runs per game in the month of September. That's not good enough. A 2-run drop-off, and I know the Mets had a historic month of August in terms of how many runs they put up, home runs, everything you could find. It was a remarkable month for the offense, but then it came down to the starters are pretty much the same. An ERA total over 5.5 in both of these cases in August and September. And then you look at August and September. August, the bullpen, 4.42 reliever ERA. And the Mets did not win a lot of games in the month of August. They actually lost more than they did win. But even so, the bullpen kind of had their back when these starters weren't able to go deep in games. It's been the opposite in the month of September. This bullpen struggling. An ERA over 6.08 is the reliever ERA right now for the Mets in the month of September. And that is a problem because when you look at this bullpen, yes, they don't get enough time to really rest with how bad these starters have gone and the starters' inability to go deep into games. Then you look at the bullpen this month, and it's just like, all right, well, they do have leads. They do have certain spots where they do have a lead, and there's certain guys. Edwin Diaz has not looked great in September. Reed Garrett gave up a couple of runs yesterday that blew the lead once again for the Mets. So all of that is a bad sign heading towards October. And the Mets got themselves a bit of luck in the last couple of days. San Francisco ended up taking on the Los Angeles Dodgers the last couple of games. They lost 2 out of 3 in San Francisco. So now the lead in the wild card sits at 1.5 games, with the Mets having a 1.5 game lead for the final wild card spot, even in a stretch where they're 2-10 or 2-8 in their last 10, excuse me. So when you look at it overall, Arizona's squeaking in there with 2 games back on the Mets. And then Cincinnati has completely fallen apart. Once again, they get swept to the Athletics out in Sacramento this weekend. So the Mets catch a break in a rough stretch where they lost 8 in a row. They are somehow still sitting in a playoff spot. So, I mean, it's not great for the confidence heading into October if you do get there, but right now you just have to ride the luck that the Mets have faced. And San Francisco and Cincinnati both losing, plus the fact that the Giants now have to head into a 3-game set. They're on the road in Arizona, so they're going to be bouncing back and forth, win or loss, between them and the Arizona Diamondbacks. So that's not going to be great for them. And then San Francisco finishes off the season with a 4-game set at Dodger Stadium next week. or later this week. And then you got a couple of series that you probably should win against St. Louis and Colorado, but it could be over at that point if this Mets team starts to roll, starts to get anything going, and they have a stretch where it all starts on their home field. They do have a nice series here where they hopefully will win a couple of games. They have to, but it's not going to be easy. They're going up against a tough opponent. They welcome in the San Diego Padres for a 3-game set at Citi Field. It all starts tomorrow night, a 7:10 start. Michael King will grab the ball for San Diego, 4-2 on the year with a 2.87 ERA. Has not pitched much this year due to injury, but he's finally back and looking healthy with that 2.87 ERA. Clay Holmes on the other side has had a couple of shaky starts recently, especially his last one, and that one was down in Philadelphia, just not good enough from Holmes. He's 11-8 on the year with a 3.75 ERA. And it's going to be a tough game for this Mets team. They have to get to San Diego's starting pitching, and with Michael King on the mound, it's not going to be easy, but this Mets offense needs to take them to the promised land because they cannot rely on this starting rotation anymore. And if the Mets are slumping on offense, that is the worst possible sign because this pitching staff has, you've seen it all month long already, an ERA over 5 in the starting rotation, an ERA over 6 in the bullpen. Where are you getting any contributions from your pitching staff? So they need to be strong on the offensive side of things, and it all starts, like I said, tomorrow night, a 7:10 start as the Padres take on the Mets at Citi Field. Let's shift things finally to the other side of New York, and it's the New York Yankees who were also in action this weekend. They took on the Boston Red Sox up in Boston. Fenway Park was the scene, and the Yankees end up with another series. They take 2 out of 3 from the Boston Red Sox, a team that they looked like they weren't even close to when they faced off just under a month ago back at Yankee Stadium. Boston won 3 out of 4 in that series and really just crushed the Yankees all throughout. The Yankees looking red hot right now since then, and they've been really good, especially in this stretch of games. If you started this stretch against the Houston Astros on the road down in Houston, then you go home to face the Toronto Blue Jays, who have had your number all season long. Then you take on the Detroit Tigers for another series at home. And then you go on the road to Boston to take on a tough Red Sox team that's had your number as well all season long. And you come out of that stretch 7-5. With how the Yankees played against those teams all season long before this, you would take that 9 times out of 10, even 10 times out of 10. Great stuff by the Yankees. I know they ended up losing yesterday 6-4 on Sunday Night Baseball in a game that they probably want to forget, and a start that they want to forget from Will Warren. He gave up 6 runs in the first inning, just not good enough from him, and he's had a couple of starts like that where I mean, if it gets postseason time, you are going nowhere close to Will Warren. That's really what it comes down to. Against good teams, he had a couple of rough outings against Toronto as well as Los Angeles, out in LA against the Dodgers earlier in this season. And then he goes to Boston and does that. I mean, that's not a guy that you can have in your postseason rotation. He's going to be a guy who's going to give you maybe some length out of the bullpen, but that's it. And that's really what it comes down to for Will Warren. So they lose yesterday 6-4. They couldn't mount a comeback, especially against Garrett Crochet, but they took the first 2 games of this series, and that is absolutely huge for this Yankees team. 4-1 on Friday, and Luis Gil had a great game. 4-1 on the season. He's been electric since he's come back from the IL, and he's 4-1 on the year. Like I said, 6 innings in this one with 0 runs allowed. I mean, just great stuff from him in a tough game on the road. Finally, the Yankees have a couple of starters where they got them healthy, and they can really rely on them to get going. Aaron Judge hit a milestone in this game. He passed Joe DiMaggio for 4th all-time on the Yankees home run list, and that was a great sign for him as he continues to roll up that list in Yankee greats. But of course, that list, when you look at it, it's all full of World Series champions, and that's really where Aaron Judge needs to earn his flowers. If he grabs one of those, then you really put him with some of the Yankee all-time greats, but not just yet. It then came to Saturday where Judge had another solid game, but it was Max Fried who ends up getting the win. 17-5 on the year. Jazz Chisholm with some contributions once again. Of course, this Yankees team has really relied on Jazz in that 5-hole behind a lot of those power hitters at the top of their lineup. Bellinger's in there. Stanton has been in there since he got healthy again. And Aaron Judge, of course, in the middle of that lineup. And then you look at Jazz Chisholm, probably in that 5 or 6 hole each and every time he plays, and the contributions have been great by him. He reached on an infield single that he had an RBI on in the first inning. Then he had another RBI single in the third. Then he hit a bomb to right center field in the fifth. So the Yankees had a 4-0 lead, and that's really how it ended. 5-3, the Yankees win it, and David Bednar gets his 24th save of the year. Locked down things in the ninth, and just nobody on base. Just keep it simple, and the Yankees get the job done. So 2 monster wins up in Boston. They get the job done, and the Red Sox now chasing the Yankees in the wild card picture as the Yankees now sit pretty comfortably right now. Houston now falls into the wild card picture with Seattle on a tear right now in the American League, a 9-game win streak, and they've completely knocked down Houston in the division as well. And Houston has won 4 of their last 10, kind of struggling right now, looking to figure things out. And they're sitting 2.5 games back, of the Yankees, and 1 game back of the Boston Red Sox. Texas is 2 games behind Houston. So the Yankees have a comfortable 4.5 game lead right now in a wild card spot. So it looks like they're going to head into this stretch where they're playing a lot of easier teams. It's a very nice schedule from here on out for this Yankees team, and it all starts tonight as Carlos Rodon gets the ball. He's going to go up to Minnesota and take on the Minnesota Twins. It's going to be Simeon Woods Richardson on the other side for Minnesota. A 7:40 start, where this is a stretch now where the Yankees, if they could go 10-3, even more than that, then you're looking at them and saying, all right, this is real positive. They can get into the wild card spot easily. Could they really challenge the Blue Jays for the division? That's really what it comes down to. If they could get 10 of these 13 games against Minnesota. They have 3 games on the road. Baltimore, 4 games down at Camden Yards. Then Chicago and Baltimore, both at Yankee Stadium, 3-game sets to finish the year. 10-3 is probably the mark that you're looking for. If they go 9-4, it's not the end of the world, but that's what this Yankees team is looking at right now. You got some of your best pitchers on the mound. Get the job done. Seal the deal. Chase down Toronto. Try and get that bye in the first round in the American League. That would be huge for this Yankees team. So we'll see what happens, but the Yankees start a 3-game set in Minnesota tonight. 7:40 start. It's Rodon and Woods Richardson between the Yankees and the Twins. But that will do it for episode 109 of the MudWatch Sports Podcast. Please subscribe below. I've been Zach Malamuth. Thanks for watching, and talk to you all on Thursday.